This is the Open University.
Hello and welcome back to an Open University which is non-thematic this time. So I'm just back from travel. I had this terrible experience coming back from the Venice Biennale. We came back via Momus, where my partner's family lives. And the train from Momus to Paris was delayed by 4 hours because of wildfires at Fontainebleau, just outside Paris. We sat in a siding and chugged our way very slowly towards the capital because of having to go on the old line, not the high-speed line, and there was a backlog of trains. Because none of the trains could go past this huge fire. It was the largest forest fire that France has seen for some time, and of course the direct result of climate change. It's the summer, so people are traveling round. This introduces a kind of cosmopolitanism to city life. At the same time that Paris really empties out, especially in August, Paris is a ghost town. A lot of the residents, like me, go elsewhere. And so you get this kind of weird overlay of cosmopolitanism of the tourists, or currently a lot of Spanish people here in Paris, escaping the high temperatures down south, I guess. But also you get the immigrant areas, which I find increasingly stimulating around Stalingrad. Just down the hill from here, it's like Stalingrad, La Chapelle, which are kind of bad areas full of drug addicts and panhandlers and people living in tent cities under the two-line metro. But also a kind of vitality and a vibrancy which I don't see in other parts of the city. So that's a kind of cosmopolitanism of the poor. And I've always thought there are this freedom kind of at the very bottom of our system and at the very top of it. So the people who have the luxury of being able to come to Paris and stay in the very expensive hotels here, i.e. the tourists, who've saved up, to come on family holidays. That's one form of internationalism. Another form is the economic migrants who come here from, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Africa, often for colonial reasons because they come from countries that were ex-French colonies, Central and Western Africa, for instance. And I find that a great source of optimism and stimulation. Something that I was watching recently, a lecture by a guy called Ruby Justice Thello, who's a NYU design and theory professor, talking about why there are no new aesthetics emerging. So he talks about so many films are sequels these days, how many fashions and things are revivals, how vintage is shaping, a kind of nostalgia and vintage is shaping our aesthetic, and how Pitchfork, for instance, reviews increasingly mainstream pop albums increasingly favorably. It's abandoned the kind of avant-gardism of early Pitchfork reviews. I was struck by a quote that Thello picked from Adorno, which is that art respects the masses by confronting them with what they could be rather than conforming to them in a degraded state. That's a characteristically elitist, if you like, or bourgeois Adorno position on a left-wing theme, which is you don't just give people what they want, you give them what they ought to want in a better world. And I'm very much on that page thematically, whether it's new prime ministers or new bands or what kind of art I want to see at the Venice Biennale. So don't look for new aesthetics and new ideas in old media. So that makes me a little sad, because it makes me think that the kind of music subculture that I came in on is no longer capable, even if I try to inject new ideas into it, because it's not a new medium. It's not going to really be the medium that people are paying attention to. So hitherto unimagined media are probably going to be where we should be looking, whether it's artificial intelligence, computer games, things which could only happen now and are going to bring their own ideas in, perhaps non-human ideas. Do you like my jacket? I just got this jacket in Le Relais, which is our local vintage store down the hill, just to trivialize a little bit. But it's part of the same theme, because this is a vintage jacket. I guess it's a power shoulder 80s kind of jacket. So I'm enjoying having these padded shoulders, MES in shoulder pads. I guess I have to blame myself for being part of the very thing that is now seen as a problem, which is that I'm very much stuck on the 60s and 70s and a kind of retro aesthetic. The new PS collection from IKEA has got some nice bright colors that one might have encountered. The new convertible chair, for instance, in the PS collection at IKEA, which looks like it could have come out of 1972, And I'm a sucker for all that stuff because it's comfortingly harking back to a time when people did believe in the future and did believe in modernism. I came in on the very tail end of modernism, so there were bands in the 70s like Wire who were very much reading from the modernist hymn sheet. That line, Colin Newman line about I found something no one else is looking for, I've found something that there's no use for, and what's more, I'm keeping it to myself. That's very much like a mantra that a 20th century artists would come up with. I don't think you'd say that in the age of sharing and social media. You wouldn't be keeping it to yourself for a start. So I'm seeing a lot of advantages in the old ways, like the playlist I'm going through at the moment of Man Alive documentaries. The BBC's anthropology and sociology show in the 70s, which was always very socially aware, left-wing directors from Cambridge coming and talking to Borstal boys and this kind of thing. But who's making that kind of content for YouTube, for instance, now? I don't really see it. I see a lot of people who want me to envy them, which is fine, and I do envy them, especially if they live in Asia currently. I envy them a lot. But there's more, the model of centralized elitist broadcasting, which started disappearing in the 80s, really, although Channel 4 was the last flourishing of it in the UK. It seems to have gone. But anyway, I was talking about the summer season and travel, and I got trapped on a train on the way back from the Venice Biennale outside Paris. We were just like, what would have been just like 40 minutes outside Paris, but we had to be shunted onto the old line from the high-speed line because the high-speed line was menaced by one of the largest forest fires that France has seen in quite a while. Hugely dried up French countryside, which is being either spontaneously sparked into fires or actually arsonists are going in there and for a lark starting fires, forest fires, which are incredibly destructive. And it's kind of put me off travel a little bit because you never know, especially if you're going from France to Germany. And the German trains are so awful anyway, so often delayed. So I was going to go to Berlin after Milan and Venice and possibly just throw a few things into my storage unit and get a few things out and, come back and see friends, of course, there as well. But I kind of have cancelled that or bracketed that. And there is an upcoming holiday in the centre of France. But who knows if, there'll be fires there as well. At the moment, it's blissfully cooler. It kind of feels a bit air-conditioned in comparison to the 30 to 40 degree temperatures we had last week and the week before. Feels almost luxuriously cool now because it's only going to like 25 here. But the hot weather will return. It's going to come back in a few days. So we live in this new reality, which is totally about climate change and totally about the priorities of a culture which thinks that oil production and keeping low prices for oil and keeping carbon-based motor vehicles dominant is the main priority rather than stopping climate change or providing social justice. New Prime Minister in the UK, I don't really have any comment about. I don't expect great things. He's already said he's going to be drilling for new oil, giving new licenses to oil companies in the North Sea, despite the fact we were told recently that there wasn't much oil left in the North Sea. And he's also providing military bases to the US for continuing its war against Iran and Middle Eastern targets. So No change there as far as I can see. And what else? The Venice Biennale itself felt a little bit thin-blooded to me this year, with notable exceptions. Some of the collateral shows I enjoyed. There was a show of Italian artists. The Iceland Pavilion, which is off campus, it's a collateral pavilion, was very impressive. Japanese artists at the Palazzo Pisani Santa Marina, very good group show there. And a great video art at the Complesso dell'Ospedaletto, and the Holy See Pavilion, which is actually the Vatican City's off-site pavilion, was surprisingly good. It was about modernist churches and kind of utopian ideas of where Christianity and modernism meet, because modernism is a kind of religion. I continue to be enthralled to 20th century modernism and the great ideas which were thrown up by a period which did still believe in the future, and in making things new. There is always this sense of confusion. I think I have a certain sense of confusion about the African curators' selections at this year's Biennale, because a lot of African artists in there and their use of color and form and everything is kind of alien to me. There's a kind of chaotic cavalcade of colors and forms, which I don't quite understand, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I just need to get my head around something new, something unfamiliar. But often these, the spotlight shifting to peripheral modernisms or peripheral forms of Western art, disadvantaged classes and nations contributing to a discourse which is already established by Western mainstream art. That can often be a double-edged sword, you know. It's really just confirming our own prejudices and our own aesthetics. But this time, I don't know, I was a little bit confused by it all. It felt almost like it was not just a monument to a curator who died during the preparation of the Arsenale show, but also a monument to the Venice Biennale itself, because things ain't what they used to be. There isn't the same cultural clout in the art world, because it's partly because it's exhausted itself by being so guilt-ridden, which is something I've talked about a lot. Of course, I want there to be progressive political positions in art exhibitions, but I generally find that I draw the most nourishment from things which are off-topic and things which are transcending the curatorial themes. And I tend to skip the curatorial explanations of why the art is there and look at what the art can do for me personally, what I can steal from it, you know, apart from anything else. I am thinking about making a new album over the summer, which would be a guitar-only album. So all those traditionalists, don't get too excited, because I know you keep saying that you'd give an arm, or you give someone else's arm or leg to hear a Momus guitar album again. It wouldn't sound like Circus Maximus. I think it would sound more like Bambi. Bambi in 2013 went back to an earlier way of recording for me, which was my bedroom recordings made with kind of Anglepoise lamps and sellotape and tissues stuffed under guitar strings. So it was much more an avant-garde use of the guitar, a broken guitar usually, or a prepared piano, because I had a piano in my room as a teenager, a real piano, and I'd stuff things into the strings and make it sound weird and, you know, modernist. John Cage was brand new for me at that point. And so it probably would sound more like that than Circus Maximus. But, you know, I like the idea of a limitation, using, in the way that, you know, the accordion limited me round about 6 years ago, and forced me to make a new kind of sound. Not terribly happy with the latest, you know, the reworking I made this week of the driver, for instance. Car crash in autumn, 10 years today. You wanted an exit, the way. I was locked up when you broke in. I was the car you crashed in. How can so much pain be in something that's gone?
Guggenheim-Glasses, Van der Graaf hair. So many faces, but you're not there. Amputee syndrome, my phantom limb buzzing inside me under my skin. How can so much pain be in something that's gone? And I am the driver of nothing at all. One of us void now, the other just now.
It's too synth-based, and it's too kind of, the style is too kind of nebulous and glossy, and I would like to go back to more acoustic sounds. What else can I talk to you about? I'm selecting songs for my live shows right now. I have a show on August the 1st in Karlsruhe. I'm doing sort of, wondering whether I want to show my YouTube videos in the background of that or make an entirely new type of video, and the latter seems to be in favor at the moment. I've got a very abstract video backdrop, which is almost just like lighting. It's almost like ambient lighting, but it doesn't restrict people to readings that they might be familiar with of the more recent songs I'm doing, because I feel like my songs from 2016 to this year have been neglected. The last decade or so has been neglected, partly because I haven't played live very much during that period. So it's really exciting for me to take those songs out onto the road. There's another show in Paris on the 26th of September, which will be indoors this time. The German show is outdoors on a long night at the museums in Karlsruhe. What else can I talk about? Yeah, I love Paris. I really love the cosmopolitanism of Paris. And of course, there's this double-edged sword of this time of year, because in August, a lot of the actual Parisians go somewhere and Paris shuts down. A lot of the shops are shut for several weeks from about the end of July until late into August. And the city's taken over by tourists. So there are areas which, the tourist spots like Montmartre or the Eiffel Tower are absolutely, ant heaps of touristic activity. Currently a lot of Spanish tourists here escaping the excessive heat in Spain. Fewer Asians this year because it's very expensive for, say, Japanese with their very weak yen to come here. So it doesn't feel globally terribly cosmopolitan. A lot of Americans, of course. And but also Paris has a different kind of cosmopolitanism, which is the tent cities under the 2 metro line up near Barbès, Stalingrad, La Chapelle stations, which are, on the face of it, miserable cosmopolitanisms, but also those areas are African. You can walk, like I walked yesterday from Montmartre, which is mostly, a touristic area, obviously, and a museum sort of commemorating the Montmartre, the very different Montmartre Picasso would have known in the Bateau Lavoir, or the people singing at Le Lapin Agile would have known. And it's also the Montmartre which I remember from the 90s, because I lived there during the French Touch era, when there were a lot of people like Daft Punk and Air living in Montmartre, and me doing my Shibuya Kei songs for Kihimi Kari and doing quite well with that. But that was posited on a kind of nostalgia for a time which had gone, really. So I walked yesterday from Montmartre through Barbès area, which has actually a very exciting cultural center now, and what used to be the Tati department store building, it's actually a very optimistic and exciting creative hub now, run by this guy called Yusuf, what's he called? Yusuf, I forget his second name. But a great library and a great little cafe there, and interesting clothes and magazines and things. And then you walk from there along the 2 line, and there's like an Indian or subcontinental area, which is, could be Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Indians, mostly men on the street, very few women, but very full of vitality. And then as you get further along, there's like a Jewish area up the hill towards where I live here. And then where I live, it's more sedate, and a beautiful park just down the... So, you know, I just wanted to say, because we live in a time when this distinction, racial distinctions within cities have been weaponized, you know, especially by people who don't live in cities. They think that cities are scary and dangerous because people with different ethnic backgrounds live there. And I think that's absolutely wrong-headed, and that is the exciting and wonderful part of cities for me, is that they have ethnic minorities living cheek by jowl and generally getting on, generally just being busy and commercially minded, and sometimes suffering. You know, the latest arrivals always suffering intense, but eventually being integrated. And I don't mean, when I say integrated, I don't mean that I think people should adopt French ways or anything. I absolutely don't. I think you have the right to stay different. Just as when I was living in Japan, I had the right to not particularly learn Japanese. I picked up some Japanese, but I felt it's a fantastic privilege to be the other, to be allowed to be the other in a place, and to incarnate, because it's a fantastically optimistic idea that you can incarnate an otherness and even provide, by your example, some kind of different way of living. Because people get into cul-de-sacs and dead ends, and people get geriatric, and cultures can get geriatric. They can stagnate. They do stagnate, especially when they don't allow immigration and new, fresh ideas in, and don't embrace forms of otherness which are proposed to them by their minorities, especially. So I'm totally in favor of, and I love, although, you know, I feel it's a slightly risky walk to take from Montmartre to Belleville, and up here it's incredibly revitalizing for me. And it's something I really value about this city, that is a world city in ways that other European cities haven't quite achieved. It's much more cosmopolitan on the proletarian level than pretty much any other city that I know in Europe. And I value that, and I think that we need to refocus our politics to an understanding of how rich that is. So, of course, something like the Venice Biennale is also... We had the Foreigners Everywhere episode a couple of years ago, the theme rather, and this time I keep forgetting what the title was, even because it's such a bland title this year. Somehow, if that's being preached to me from the art world, it gets less exciting. I mean, I live that reality of the difference around me everywhere being very fruitful. And but I don't really need it preached at me every time I go to an art biennial. So yeah, I found it kind of less exciting this year, the Venice Biennale. I don't know. Perhaps there are other sources of excitement which I should be looking to. And some of the peripheral shows, like some of the collateral shows, were actually more exciting, as I say. The world comes to you, and that's the exciting thing. You know, even if you don't go to the world will come to you. And also the weather of the global south will probably come to you as well. So don't feel you're immune to any of the chaos which is awaiting us.
Open University.